Hello, I'm Ellie, host of The Healthy Practice. In this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Catherine Gray. Catherine is founder, CEO and lead therapist at Cup of Tea, a social enterprise and non-profit organisation focused on offering mental health services to children and young people. She's going to explain a bit more about the concept behind Cup of Tea in a minute, and I can't wait to hear about it. You're doing some really unique things, Catherine. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into running a social enterprise. Some of you may already be involved in one, be that running your own or offering services at a social enterprise, or perhaps you've just always had a yearning to have more of a social impact. So stick around as we learn how to navigate this sector. Welcome to The Healthy Practice, Catherine. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thank you. Thanks for inviting me along. So I'm Catherine and I am the CEO and lead therapist at Cup of Tea. So my background was initially having a degree in psychology, which a lot of people do, especially with results and things coming out at the moment. And unfortunately, it doesn't really lead to a lot. You've got to do quite a bit after doing your psychology degree. So I worked for a while in mental health, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I was inspired by an occupational therapist who came in to see someone where I was working. And I did my master's in occupational therapy following that. So we're based in Norfolk, and I've worked in Norfolk for the last, well, all of my healthcare career. After finishing my master's in occupational therapy, I went into working in youth mental health in the local NHS trusts. And it was this point I was starting to get a bit frustrated, a bit kind of, this doesn't really fit me, it doesn't fit the young people that I'm working with, and wanted to kind of change things up a bit and started to put ideas together about how I could do that. So I worked in different services in the NHS, from early intervention psychosis to research and perinatal mental health, and all this time kind of wondering why it didn't quite feel right for me and for some of the people I was working with. And that's where it started to develop the idea of Cup of Tea. I didn't want it to be a profit-making organisation in the sense of it being purely for profit. I wanted to benefit some of those people who were missing out on services or who kind of NHS services didn't quite fit. So I started developing the social enterprise, and it's kind of rocketed a bit from there. We're turning 6 years old in December, which I still can't quite believe. But it's only in the last 2 years since I left the NHS in 2021 that we've become a full-time service, and we've now got a team. So this last 2 years, it feels like we're really kind of making a mark now.
Fantastic. Thank you for that introduction, Catherine. You've had quite a journey actually coming to Cup of Tea. Can you explain more about Cup of Tea and its setup? So like, what's the organisational structure? How's it all set up?
So we set up as a company limited by guarantee with a specific asset lock and memorandum and articles that mean we're a social enterprise and not for profit. So we're similar to a CIC, but we're as a limited company, which means that we can have trading arms where we can generate our own income so that we can then achieve our social mission. It took quite a while to decide on structures because there's so many out there. And I did a few courses and had funding from places like the School for Social Entrepreneurs, which kind of walk you through those initial ideas and how to set up and what you want it to look like. And that was really helpful to start with.
And did you always know that you wanted to pursue a social enterprise as opposed to like a private limited company? I think you probably did, because you didn't want it to be for profit, didn't you?
So... Yeah, I didn't really know what social enterprise was to begin with. I just knew the young people I was working with, they either didn't get an NHS service because they didn't meet threshold, or they had a certain intervention in the NHS and didn't quite hit the mark for them, so they were then discharged. And their only options, especially where we are, was to go privately, which is really expensive. And so we had this group of people who couldn't get NHS services, who couldn't get private, and were just falling through the gap. And I didn't know quite how I addressed that. So I surveyed lots of young people, and I was thinking, do I set up as a charity or what do I do? And interestingly, the young people I spoke to and families said that they wouldn't have gone to a charity. And this is back in 2017. There was a bit of a stigma for some of the people about going to a charity for certain things. So I went on a 7-week social enterprise discovery course by Lola Stafford Consulting, who is just Jackie, who runs that, is phenomenal. And she runs a 7-week course that looks at all different organisational structures. And that helped me to think, right, social enterprise, company limited by guarantee is kind of the route I want to go down, and the way that I can have input as a director and as a clinician as well.
Can I ask, because I don't really know, what's the difference between a social enterprise and a charity?
So charity often relies on fundraising and grants, and they can have a separate trading arm, but it's not the majority of what they bring in. Social enterprises, you almost want to begin with, you rely on grants and donations again, but you want to move away from that, and you want to be able to have your own kind of sustainable income stream. And with how competitive funding has got, oh boy, it's got competitive since COVID.
Yeah.
To be able to generate our own income and go, we can offer this, we can bring money in so that we can, for us, offer subsidized therapy, or we can put on therapy groups where people then don't have to pay, means we don't have to fill in another application and kind of wait for those results to go, oh no, we know that project's now ended. It means we can be more sustainable. And for me, that was important in our area, especially where we see lots of charities and organizations and groups come and go, and it's not consistent, and that's not helpful for families.
So what's the most rewarding thing about running a social enterprise? And also on the flip side, what do you find the most challenging as well?
I think the most rewarding is I can do things in the way I want to do things, and not necessarily have to battle bureaucracy and procedures. And definitely the best thing, the most rewarding thing, is getting away from the millions of meetings that I used to have constantly in the NHS. And that every decision we make is led by the young people and families, whereas sometimes it felt a bit like we were doing to rather than doing with in some of my other roles. So to be alongside the people we're working for is kind of the best part. The most challenging, it's felt quite isolating at some times. When I left my NHS role, I left this incredible team who I loved working with to be on my own with my directors. And at that point, we didn't have anyone else in the team. So there was no one to bounce ideas off. And I'm not local to Norfolk, so I hadn't grown up here and I didn't know what else was there. So I didn't have these amazing connections, which I have now with other social enterprises. So that was a real challenge, is building that reputation and building those local connections.
Yeah, and that network that you really rely on or need.
It's essential, and we can't do this alone. We all have to work together, because one organisation isn't going to fix every single young person's mental health.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's a network. What opportunities do social enterprises offer in terms of the therapy that you can practice that perhaps a traditional therapy space you might not be able to offer? Like perhaps free therapy or a discounted price?
Yeah, I mean, our therapy is free at the point of people accessing it, again, similar to statutory services. We do sometimes charge for groups. This is because we found that some people don't come or don't have that buy-in, so we do offer kind of a nominal fee sometimes, just to kind of encourage people to stick to appointments. The opportunities, however, are huge. You can be incredibly creative. One of the reasons we set up was to get out of stuffy, boring clinic rooms, and that was from the feedback we had, is that we go to this room, it feels plain, it feels boring, it feels sterile, it's not particularly friendly. And so we created our mobile therapy van from that feedback initially. And we now have a woodland as well. So again, all this comes from young people going, oh, why don't we do it this way? And we go, yeah, why not? Let's do it. Let's apply for some funds, or let's use some of our money.
There's no reason why we
crack
can't.
on. And we can be really quick and really reactive and interactive with young people and families to go, yeah, great suggestion, let's do it, rather than let's have a meeting. For me particularly, I'm quite impulsive sometimes. So my directors are great at going, does this still go with that social mission? Are you sure you're not getting swept up in ideas from the young people? So they ground me, but it's great to be really kind of enthusiastic and dynamic with them.
Oh, definitely. And talking of social mission, so what actually is a social mission or a social purpose? And what's the definition of it, and what's yours?
So I think for us, it is, what is our social purpose? What is that ultimate thing that we are striving to do? And that's different for lots of people. So it might be around hunger or poverty or equality. For us, it is around making mental health services accessible and available at the earliest point possible. So we want it to be, our mission is for it to be as accessible and easy for young people and families to get the mental health support they need at the time and point that they need it.
And how do you ensure you and your team go back to that core purpose or value as your enterprise grows? And also as you go through like the daily grind, how do you make sure you're all coming back to that?
Yeah, so this is something which, as we've now got a team, so since 2021, it's grown from me, and we've now got 7 people in the team, including some volunteers, so 11 people in total. So we've grown quite a lot. We don't actually have an office space, so having contact with each other has been really tricky when we work on lots of different projects. So one thing that we've now put in place is that we have a monthly online team brew where we can get together and we can talk over everything. And then quarterly, we have a team meet where we will either look at what have we done over the last 6 months, what are we doing in the 6 months going forward, and have a social element to that as well. And we, our first one that we had, which was last week, we have reviewed all our values, thinking about how are we kind of reaching and how are we striving towards achieving those, and what can we do more. So I'm just leaning down. So we have all our values printed out, which is kind of like, we want change, we are sustainable, we are transparent, and we go through and we think about how are we doing that? What could we do? And then as an individual and as a team as a whole, what can we do in the next 3 months till the next team meet? But also longer term, how are we demonstrating this to the people we're ultimately working for, our clients and our funders?
And you mentioned no office space. So in 2020, the pandemic actually forced you to switch from your therapy in your van to looking for a woodland space that you mentioned. And I'm curious, what was it like running a social enterprise during the pandemic, and what pressures did you face? How did you get through it?
It was a really interesting time. So it was really early on in Cup of Tea's journey. We'd bought our van November 2018. And we'd finished converting it in July 2019. So we'd had a full summer of 2019 going to festivals and holding appointments and kind of demoing what it is we do as an organisation. And it was absolutely fantastic. We were really up and running, having
great.
Clients and travelling around. And then 2020 hit.
Yeah.
And we were lucky in that we were in the position that, because we were providing mental health and trauma support, we were able to continue working with young people and holding in-person appointments throughout the whole pandemic. The problem with the van was it was too small to socially distance in safely. So we used it as a base, and we went to nature parks or local reserves, and we had it as our base, and then we walked and had our therapy outdoors. And obviously there wasn't many people around because of the kind of regulations at the time. So it was really confidential and private. And the young people said, we don't want to go back to just being in the van. We love the van, but actually incorporating outdoors is something that they were like, let's do more of this. Let's not go back. We found that when it started getting busy again, using public parks and spaces was more challenging, especially when you're working with things like attachment difficulties. If you've built a den or you've done a piece of work in your therapy session, you go back the next week and it's been destroyed. That's a really tricky thing to manage. So that was the point we were like, we probably need our own woodland space. Working through the pandemic in that way was really tricky. It was lots of balancing and making sure that we were complying with all the different updates we were getting. But so many. And we saw such a different population of young people coming through, people who had never needed or experienced mental health difficulties before. And so we had groups online, and we had families working on books where we tested out different outdoor activities, and we wrote a book together and distributed that to families as well. I was still working in the NHS at that time, 3 days a week. And I also went and worked at NHS Nightingale in London for the first 7 weeks of the pandemic. So I was travelling between Norfolk and London and running Cup of Tea at the same time. So for me, it was completely busy, whirlwind.
Manic.
Yeah, really manic.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't know how I would have coped if I'd been furloughed or not been working. So I think for me, that was good, and felt useful and great experience. And actually, the team at NHS Nightingale in London were phenomenal, and it made me think about how I would want a team and kind of lessons for that going forwards as well.
That's really good. Do you have any advice on how to grow your income as a social enterprise? So what avenues should people go down if they're thinking of setting one up?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. When I was reading it, it's something we've looked at a lot. For us, we knew we didn't want to sell therapy. That's not something we wanted to charge our end users, so not where we want to generate income. However, we do have contracts and tenders with councils and other providers. So we will kind of have contracts there, and that generates income for us. We provide training, and that's the main income stream that we're really trying to develop right now. Our online training, and that's to other groups and professionals, but also to parents and families where they can get more information on a particular topic. So for us, training is really the income stream we want to push, because we've got some incredibly talented therapists and peer support workers in our team that have so much to share that we just want to kind of share that knowledge. And again, doing it so it's accessible, but also so we can generate some income. We've also looked at products and apparel and things like that. So we have some hoodies, and we've got mugs and water bottles, which are all kind of our campfire woodland related range. So again, that's something which we can sell at events and generate some income that way too.
That's a great idea. A little online shop.
Yeah, a little online shop on our website.
Yeah, nice.
And maybe one day we'll have like our own tea blend or something like that to go with the name.
Oh, that's a good idea from the woodland. Oh, that's such a good idea. That'll be really nice. Well, sign me up because I love tea. So I'll be in there. Do you have any advice on how to make a funding application stand out from the crowd?
Yeah, funding applications is something I've had to learn really quickly, and I had no experience in writing at all. I'm a therapist. I've not run a business previously, other than a small origami business I did have for 10 years, but that's a side point.
Amazing.
That's completely different.
That's a different podcast.
But I didn't need funding applications for that. So I was really terrified about writing them, and I wrote my first couple and they got rejected and I didn't get anywhere. And my friend Sarah, who I did my first social enterprise course with, she runs an amazing organisation called Mini Donkeys for Wellbeing. And she sat down with me and wrote a grant application and showed me how to put different lingo and jargon and all the words funders want and put that in. And we did get our first funding application from Sarah helping us. I think to make it stand out, it's to really show why you're doing things, not just I want money to run this event or these workshops because it's nice. It's including, for us, it's including the voice of the young people and families. And we've switched from going, I've got all these great ideas, to they've got these ideas and we want to put them into fruition. We want to make them work. And so including quotes and including testimonials and the ideas and the voice of the people you're working with is far more powerful than just a random clinician going, I think this is a good idea.
Yeah. So showing the need for what you want to do, as opposed to just saying, I think this will be good. Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, and showing the voices, so it's not just your voice on the application, really showing that you've properly consulted and collaborated with people.
So we've learned that social enterprises have multiple income streams. So how do you manage your finances? Is there any software that you use or people that you lean on or anything
Definitely
like that?
People I lean on. Finances is, again, probably worse than the funding applications. Is completely out of my comfort zone. So our accountants are phenomenal. Definitely get an accountant who you can work with and trust. And again, I've trialed a few over the time. I'm fairly good with things like this, but it's not in my comfort zone. I don't understand a lot of the different financial terms. So a good accountant who will sit down and explain things and just work through it with you is gold dust. So, and our accountants have done fundraising for us and they get to know us really well. So it's a really good relationship. We have Xero as our software. We have Write-Up as well, obviously, that we can put all our notes on, but also look at invoices and keep track of what we're doing and have targets and goals. And we use Google Workspaces a lot to communicate as a team so that we can kind of keep track of projects and we can communicate. So for us, it's a mixture of different softwares, but having a person who knows them well that can guide us and give advice, because we can't be experts in everything. And that's something I've really learned, is to ask for that support and help in areas that you're not confident in. I'm pretty good with social media, bit of website coding, that kind of thing is fine, but the finances, it needs to be done right. So finding that person to lean on is essential.
Yeah. I think so. And as therapists, it's just not part of the training. Any of that sort of running a business, finances, or accounting. Yeah, it is uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's hard. So yeah, I think having an accountant. We actually did an episode with a financial advisor, and it's kind of the same advice. It's so beneficial to just get somebody to do that
there's
for
definitely
you,
some
isn't it?
things that you
Yeah,
think
good.
it's worth paying for that, just because I could do it, but it will take me hours. When someone else, I can pay them however much and they will do it so quickly with less stress and less grey hairs coming through.
Yeah, less stress and less time, so you can just get on with
Woodland
doing
stuff.
what you're good at. So yeah, fun stuff. How important are community partnerships? Do you have any advice on making connections?
That is, as I said, we can't do this by ourselves. We'd be silly and selfish and a bit arrogant to think that we could change this whole picture and landscape of youth mental health by ourselves. So community partnerships for us has been absolutely essential. We're lucky that we have ex-MP Norman Lamb in our area. So he has set up a coalition for organisations in Norfolk that support youth mental health. And so any organisation that works with young people in the mental health arena for ages 11 to 25 can sign up to the coalition. And we have monthly meetings and they have their own grants as well. But for us, what that's done is helped us build the partnerships that we work with. So not only have we had some funding from them, but our partners in that coalition have applied for funding that they then contract us to deliver therapy. So we work with young carers, we work with local organisations that work with people who are autistic, and they commission us to run groups, and we put in joint bids together, and we will survey a bigger group of young people and families to go, what are we hearing across the county with all these different populations? What do they need? And we can collaborate in that way. It's been absolutely amazing to just build that network and have a platform like that to share ideas, and also have a voice when we can talk to our local funders or our integrated care boards by going, this is what we're noticing and this is 30 organisations noticing this, and we can have such a big impact doing that.
Yeah. And what about you? So how do you make sure that you look after yourself while you're giving so much energy to your work?
Yeah, that's I did read that question. I was like, do I get rid of that question?
To talk about it. Yeah. No, you don't. Self-care,
and
Catherine.
as a therapist, I should really, and it's something I try and embed with the team as well.
Yeah.
I volunteer a lot. I make sure I spend time away from work. So I volunteer for an organisation called Love Her Wild, and it's about getting women outdoors, experiencing adventure in the outdoors.
Sounds great. Good. That sounds really. What kind of adventures do they do?
I organise
what kind of
things like walks and hikes and swimming, paddleboarding. I'm actually going with the main group to Japan next week, so we're climbing Mount Fuji. So that's what I do.
Oh, that's amazing.
So for me, self-care is.
So it's less like bubble baths, more like
get out, be outdoors.
Yeah, I'm the same actually.
I'm not very good at just sit and read or sit in a bath and, relax. I have to be kind of active, relaxing. And then I have my cats and I have my partner, and making sure that I spend time with them, because for me, when I get stressed or when I get really busy with work, I have a really bad habit of just channeling and focusing on work and working late into the night and weekends, and almost ignoring those who are around me who actually would make me feel better and less stressed. So making sure I dedicate time to friends and family is really important, because I often forget that. So they're quite good at going.
Easy to do when you're busy.
And relying on my team and letting
good.
them take some of the load as well, and sharing things like meetings and network. I don't always have to be the one that go there, so sharing that within us equally, so that everyone feels they've got ownership, as well as being able to kind of notice when we all need a bit of a pick-me-up.
Before we summarise today's topic, I just wanted to let you know that the Healthy Practice podcast is brought to you by WriteUp, the software that streamlines your practice, saves time and connects you with your patients. WriteUp helps over 13,000 clinicians and has facilitated over 4 million appointments. You can start your free trial today and check out all of the amazing features like video consultations, cashless payments, diary management, and having one place to store all of your patient records. Just go to writeup.com, that's WRITEUPP.com. We're just going to summarise some of the topics now for our listeners, just to pick up the key stuff that we've talked about. So can you put in a few words what the benefits of running a social enterprise are? What are the main benefits?
The main benefits for me are being able to make decisions with the groups of people that you're working with really quickly, being able to adapt whenever you need to adapt, and again, being really responsive and be creative, have fun, and just enjoy what you do and go, if I'm not enjoying this, let's change it. It doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah, let's try something else. Yeah, I love that. And a top tip for managing finances, I think I'm going to guess,
get an accountant. Get an accountant who you can communicate really well with. I had a couple who made me feel a little bit silly and stupid sometimes because they thought I should know things, so I got rid of them.
And I think it's also knowing that if you're not clicking with someone, it's okay to just
exactly the same as in therapy.
I think that's with everything, everything. Exactly, that's what I was thinking. Even if you're not clicking with your therapist, you can switch. It's the same thing, isn't it? So whoever you get to support you, you can switch it up. And top tips on how you support yourself.
So I think go back to your 5 ways to wellbeing. Think about getting outdoors, connecting with people, and giving back to your community. For me, are kind of the biggest things for looking after yourself.
Yeah, and asking for help if you need it, I guess. Yeah, because that's a big one, and it's difficult
really hard to do.
Well, I know that. So before I let you go, Catherine, if you were in the audience right now and you were thinking of exploring working with a social enterprise or even setting one up yourself, what would be one challenge you set yourself this week to get you onto that path?
I would say have a look to see what social enterprises are in your local area, because they take lots of different forms and guises, whether they're cafes or whether they're drop-in groups, whether they're businesses that provide training. See what's in your local area, or connect with the School for Social Entrepreneurs, who might have a list of their graduates, and just get to know what is it they do, who are they working with, and then do they share the same ethos? What do you get from their social media and their website? Because that ethos and shared values is most important when working with someone. So do a little bit of research of who is locally around you.
And where can our listeners follow more of your work or see you online?
We have our website, which is www.cup-o-t.co.uk, and that's the letter T rather than the cup of tea. And then we're on social media as Cup of Tea Services on Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, Threads, whatever your choice of social media platform, we're on there.
Wow, that's so
my
cool.
true procrastination.
I've just joined Threads, actually.
Bad.
It's bad, isn't it? Instagram, I'm terrible for it. I sit on there scrolling through. I'm like, oh my God. Thank you so much, Catherine. It has been such a pleasure to talk to you today. So thank you so much for coming on to the Healthy Practice today. And that's the end of today's episode. I just wanted to say a big thank you to Catherine. If anything struck a chord with you, please let us know. Just reach out to us on writeup.com. Remember to check out writeup.com for all of your practices software solutions and to start your free 30-day trial. No payment details are required. Thanks for listening to the Healthy Practice podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review. It really does help more than you might think. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.